Yes, the 2023 NFL Draft is over, and for many of you, you enjoyed your time over the weekend, and you're exhausted, and you don't want to hear about draft shit for the next several months. You're over it. Now you're going to pivot to minicamp and training camp and the preseason and the regular season. You got the schedule launch release coming out in like mid-May, and you're focused on that stuff. Yeah, that's all fine and good, but this draft cycle never stops. It never stops. So why stop now? Let's take a look way ahead into the distant future that inevitably will look largely inaccurate a year from now, but it's fun to do anyway, so what the hell, why not? This is my first 2024 NFL mock draft, a way too goddamn early edition. That's true. Now, for those of you that are going to naturally, because this is not based off of anything in terms of the wins, losses, in terms of me actually predicting where these teams are going to finish this year, to those that are going to sit there and rage about, I can't believe you have my team there, I can't believe you have your team here, I don't give a shit. That's not what this is about, first of all. Second of all, I use DraftKings Sportsbook for their Super Bowl odds. That's all I went off of. So if you have any beef with the fucking people that put money down, that help determine the odds makers, have beef with them. Who cares? I know some of you still won't care because comprehension is a problem and just humoring the exercise is a problem, but it is whatever. Anyways, that's how this draft order is determined. It is solely based off of those Super Bowl championship odds from DraftKings Sportsbook. That just happened to be the one that I used, and I just went 1 through 32. That's it. And, you know, a couple of things stand out from Jump Street is that, man, it's a year away, but this shit will come up very quickly. It really will. 2, you have a couple of teams that could be sitting in a real catbird seat come next year in terms of the draft because they already have multiple first-round picks. That's, of course, the Arizona Cardinals, the Chicago Bears. You know, they're in a really good spot. Also, realistically, I've got here the Green Bay Packers as well. You know, like you think about, you know, where they could end up being. We'll see. I can't remember. Was that a conditional first-round pick? I don't know if I added that here. Sorry, it's late. But the Cardinals, the Bears, at a minimum, are sitting in potentially a real position of power for next year's draft with those multiple first-round picks. Especially the Arizona Cardinals because based off of the Super Bowl odds, if this is the way the 2023 season went, and in some combination, the Cardinals and the Texans had the 2 worst records in the National Football League, it's not unreasonable to see, it might be unlikely, and I certainly think it's unlikely, but it's not unreasonable to see a scenario where the Arizona Cardinals would go into next year's draft with the number 1 and number 2 overall pick, or at a minimum 2 top 5 picks. And if they do, man, are they going to be sitting pretty in 2024. They really will. Because unlike the 2023 draft, the 2024 draft, you look at it and you see some, even a year out, some real blue chip, you know, elite type of talents as it stands right now. At quarterback, you're talking about Caleb Williams and probably, depending upon your perspective, Drake Maye, but certainly Caleb Williams. You're seeing a number of people compare him to Mahomes, and I think that's a little bit crazy at this point. I don't think he's at that level. He might be Burrow with a little bit more arm talent, which you say, well, what's the difference? Yeah, not much, right? Like, I mean, still, you know, that speaks to the stud potential that could be there. But the arguably top player in the entire draft class at this point for next year might be Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State. And we'll see how the next season plays out, but you watch him last season and you say, that dude looks like the guy. That dude looks like a future Hall of Famer. That's the dude right now. If you were to place like future bets and say 20 years from now, which of these players in this entire draft pool is most likely to end up in Canton, it's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. And how old do I feel the fact that I remember when Marvin Harrison was drafted in the first round by the Colts in '96 out of Syracuse. Watched him play his entire career. Saw him get inducted into Canton, and now his son's about to be a very high pick in the 2024 NFL draft. It's crazy. But certainly I think a lot of people are going to say that he's the top player in next year's draft at this point. But then you got Brock Bowers, the kind of generational-looking tight end from Georgia. So right there, depending upon your perspective from the offensive side of the ball, you've got 3 to 4 guys that you look at as like truly elite type of talents. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you know, you look at McKinstry, the corner from Alabama. He feels like he's in that kind of blue chip class. And maybe even Dallas Turner, the edge rusher, who at times I thought had more wow factor to him than Will Anderson on that defense for the Crimson Tide. So a number of like really blue chip guys. And if you were the Cardinals, and this is the way this board played out, you would say, man, you got to take Caleb Williams at number 1 at that point. Yeah, you certainly would. And then at number 2, you say, man, that would be really, really tempting to trade down with the quarterback desperate team and set yourself up for the next couple of years. And yeah, like if they were in this spot, they'd be foolish not to strongly entertain that possibility. However, just think about you come into a situation where you feel like you could take a franchise quarterback at 1 and a potential Hall of Fame talent wide receiver at 2. Them extra picks in future drafts are nice, but it is really, really, really effing hard to pass up on the thought of that, isn't it? Could you imagine the Cardinals? And you're going to say, well, what about Kyler Murray? If they end up with the number 1 and number 2 overall pick, then you already know everything you need to know about Kyler Murray. Fuck Kyler Murray, and you're moving the hell on. But if they did, man, could you imagine the Cardinals instantly with Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. become one of the most exciting young teams in the National Football League? And then you'll see I've got the Tennessee Titans taking Drake Maye. I don't think Will Levis going to them in round 2 prevents them from turning around and spending a top 5 pick on a quarterback if they were in a position, in a spot to be able to do so. You know, we'll see how Levis plays this year. That could change the story. But right now, it certainly would. And then when you look at the Bears, one of those teams I've referenced before with 2 first-round picks, you got Brock Bowers at 5. I'm sorry. It would be hard to pass on that type of generational talent, especially when you're talking about building around Justin Fields. And the pick that I'm having here at 5 is the pick that comes from Carolina, which is a perfect example of I don't think the Carolina Panthers will have the 5th worst record in the league in 2023. I expect it to be a bit higher than that. This is, again, just based solely off of Super Bowl odds. But if the Bears are picking in the top 5, they need to get them a blue chipper. And the best blue chipper I'd see at that point would be Bowers, the tight end from Georgia. Could you imagine now you're helping out your young quarterback by giving him this type of superstar at tight end? Unbelievable. And then, you know, going back, one of the things coming out of this draft that the Bears, to me, still are lacking is like a long-term answer as edge rusher. So Jared Verse from Florida State would be one option in a class of edge rushers, and frankly, defensive line as a whole. That's going to be pretty solid. It looks really good right now. A lot can change, but right now, you would look at next year's draft and you would say the defensive front looks like it could be pretty good again, especially at the top. Safety looks like one of the strongest positions in this entire draft. In fact, I think I've got, 4 safeties mocked in round 1. Feels a little unlikely, but wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. I could certainly see 3 of these guys going in round 1 for sure. It's a really, really damn strong safety class, especially, again, at the top. The quarterback class, as always, will be one of the primary focuses. Caleb Williams and Drake Maye, I'd find it to be a big upset unless something dramatically went wrong for either or both of these guys that they weren't top 5 picks in next year's NFL draft. Ewers from Texas, I've got him slated here at 6 to Atlanta. I don't know if I'm fully sold on him yet, but I can see where the potential upside is. Some of you might be asking, what about Shedeur Sanders? I'm not buying into it just yet, but seeing him in Colorado in 2023 could influence me one way or another. I did add a 4th quarterback here as a placeholder just for argument's sakes, and Tuanon, meaning Dolphins fans, are going to be pissed at me that I have them taking a quarterback here at 2023, but it is what it is. I did this for a couple of reasons. Number one, because I could certainly see 4 quarterbacks going in round 1 next year. 2, I do this in part because I wonder how many times you're going to see somebody hit the wrong key on their keyboard and instead of saying Michael Penix Jr., they're going to say Michael Penis Jr. I'll be dying to see how this plays out over the next year. Now, personally, do I think Penix is worth a first-round pick being a smaller guy, left-handed, almost mid-20s already with 2 torn ACLs? Fuck no, I don't. But, you know, crazier shit has happened, that's for sure. But this, so far, looks like it's a pretty good draft class. You know, lots of top-tier talent at several positions, kind of like some of the guys at the top of the wide receiver class. Now, this is just me projecting, and I could be way off here, but I really like Oronde Gadsden II from Syracuse. Second generation, wide receiver, 6'5", he can move. I'm sorry, like, I know I've seen, like, Xavier Worthy be rated pretty high. I like Mukuba from Ohio State, but Oronde Gadsden II, if I'm looking for a second wide receiver after Marvin Harrison Jr. in next year's draft class, it might be Gadsden right now. I like his potential. I really, really do, so I had to call that out here. But yeah, right now, this looks like a good draft class. You know, for the sake of education for myself, if you have somebody that you really feel like belongs in this first-round mix for 2024 right now that I don't have in here, feel free to call it out. Also, feel free to understand that a lot of these names are going to change over the next 12 months, so don't get too tied down into anything. You know, for all we know, Caleb Williams is being thought of as the consensus top quarterback in next year's draft class, and then we get to next year's draft class, and he might not even declare. Or he might be QB3 or QB4 on the board. Who the fuck really knows? Stranger shit can and has happened. But anyways, that's my first 2024 NFL mock draft. Hope you enjoy it.